Let's talk about singing a new song. You know, there is no easy way to travel a road of what seems like divine silence. Though those periods when no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you cry to seek to know God's will, to see his hand in your life, that there seems to be no response to lift and or encourage your failing spirit. You know, it leaves us wondering, is it that God has left us and is busy with more important issues? Or is it that he stays silent long enough for us to distill and discern what it is that we truly need from him? I call Psalms 88 the suicide psalm, because it sounds like the writer of that psalm is at his wit's end and life as he knows it just has no more meaning for him. His name is Heman the Korahite, and he's a part of a guild of writers called the Sons of Korah. And he is a leader of worship in King David's temple. He is not only a writer of songs at the temple, but he is also called the king's seer, which means that he is a wise man, he is a counselor, he is a trusted advisor. His name means faithful. But listen to his song of despair. Listen to his song of complaint in this Psalm 88. In Psalms 88, in verse 4, he says, I am like those who have no help. He says in verse 6, you have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. In verse 15, he says, I suffer your terrors. I am desperate. In verse 18, he says, you have caused friends and neighbors to shun me. Three quick things. Number one, we are never exempt from times of isolation, doubt, and despair. Number two, those who lead, the ones who you no longer look at, you look to. Those who lead, they struggle in silence in ways that you will never know. And number three, the struggle is real, but the struggle has meaning. We do struggle towards purpose. The Psalms of Lament, which Psalms 88 is, were Psalms where the writer poured out their hearts to God. Through these Psalms of lament, the writer sought answers. It was a psalm where the writer was always seeking answers, and answers to the confusion that they felt are what seemed like God's absence or his silence or his disconnection from their reality. The Psalms would end in resolution and reassurance that God was still in control, and that God's will would be done. But not so with Psalms 88. Not so with Psalms 88. This psalm ends open-ended. There is no conclusion. There is no real resolution and assurance. Isn't that life though? I mean, isn't that such an apt and profound description of what life is? And a life of faith. A life of faith is a messy life. A life of faith is complicated. A life of faith doesn't always end and they praised happily ever after. Because life doesn't end that way. And a life of faith doesn't end that way. But here is the beauty point in this story. It ends with Heman still speaking to God. The conversation isn't over yet. The conversation isn't over yet. God and Heman aren't done talking by any stretch of the imagination. And he will stay in there with God. He will stay in there with God until resolution comes and God gives him a new song. A new song. And the lessons are the same for us here. We don't have seasons of doubt as people who believe. We don't have seasons of doubt because we don't think that God can come through. We doubt because we know he can come through. We've seen him come through. We have a list of the times in which he has come through, but he doesn't seem to be acting or moving in the way he always has. Always has. And like Heman, we have to hang in there, complain in there, pray in there, accuse in there, point in there. Why? Because we don't get to sing a new song until we're done singing all of the old song. We don't get to sing a new song until we've finished understanding what the season of the old song is trying to teach us. We don't get to sing a new song until we understand how we grow with the lyrics and the melody and the rhythm and the tempo of the old song. We don't get to do that, because with a new song comes a new voice. With a new song comes a new perspective. With a new song becomes it becomes the catalyst for living new, living fresh, living with greater resilience, living with greater depth, living with greater capacity, and greater understanding of the reality of God in your journey. So my prayer is that we learn to sing a new song in the midst of life's difficulties. My prayer is that we learn what this period of the old song is teaching us. And even though the new song hasn't come yet, that we hang in there, we pour in there, we trust in there, we encourage in there, we have faith in there. And like Heman, we refuse to move until God gives us a new song.